For the second part of the trip, we moved eastwards into the more populated part of the country, the area covered being shown here. We took the high-speed train from Nanning to Shantau, which used to be known as Canton. It was like riding in a domestic airline. To a restaurant for lunch. The idea of the game is to keep the shuttle above the ground using either your foot or your knee. Some of them are extremely good at it. What is it that makes me think that three of them were facing the other way? A cruise on the Pearl River to see the lights. The New Year decorations were very evident here too. Chi was a very popular poet and also economist. He had the habit of falling out with the government and was internally exiled on several occasions. When he was here, he left his wife in the capital and brought his concubine. They seem to have had a very good stay. Life imitating art. Guess what we had for lunch? A rather fancy hotel. This is not a traditional Hakka house, but it is a huge round building in the Hakka style. Selfies are in fashion, aren't they? They are hand-pollinating some fruit trees. Walking barefoot on these stones is supposed to do you a world of good. I don't think Myrtle appreciated them much. In the 1960s, satellite photos from places like this had the American security quite worried. It was only during Nixon's first visit that they managed to get somebody onto the site, into the area, so they could see that they are houses rather than missile silos. The UN has designated this a World Heritage Site. Despite that, the restaurant was empty both at noon and in the evening. The Hakka roundhouse was developed around the 12th century due to security problems. The bottom two floors are made with ram clay and have no windows and generally only one door. The exterior walls extended upwards for another possible 3 floors. It grew gradually narrower as it increased in height. Top floors would have windows and gun ports to fend off attacks. The space from here to here and all the space directly above it would be owned by one family. In each of the vertical units, the bottom floor was used for cooking and eating, the second floor for storage, and any higher floors would be either living or sleeping accommodation. The center part of the whole structure would have a room set aside for worship of ancestors, and then the rest was common property. Generally, the multiple units between dividers such as this would be occupied by one extended family, and the whole building could be occupied by a clan.
溪蝶双飞，满园春色惹人醉。悄悄问圣僧，女儿美不美？女儿美不美？说什么王权富贵，怕什么戒律清规？只愿天长地久，与我一株人儿紧相随。爱恋愿今生长相随。说什么王权富贵，怕什么戒律清规？只愿天长地久，与我一株人儿紧相随。
This rectangular building was built in 1775. That makes it 240 years old. The overall area covered is 2,500 square meters. You really don't need a guide to see these buildings. These were directly behind our hotel. It's 18 a.m. We're out looking for a sunrise, and the butcher's out looking for sales. He was successful. We weren't. Breakfast with the chickens. Our guide from yesterday with her son. Her daughter on the left and another girl waiting for a bus to take them to the village for school. She invited us back to her place for coffee, but it looked like she had her hands full without that. 8:15 a.m. School is in session. These boys have been delegated to clean the schoolyard. The ones cleaning off the grass are putting the stuff on the pavement. And of course the boys sweeping the pavement are sweeping it back onto the grass. Sounds like boys, doesn't it? And look out for another set of Hakka buildings and another World Heritage Site. As you can see, this building is over 600 years old. That is to say, it was built before Columbus sailed. It sort of puts things in perspective. No, Felix isn't on the flying carpet, but it does look like it. Not a magic carpet, but our bus took us back to Shantau, where we went to this so-called Buddhist temple. The monks are paid. The relics are copies from other temples. And behind all of these tiers, there are a batch of doors with rooms loaded with Buddhas, paid for by, I'm not sure who, but people believing they're going to do better in the next world because of it anyhow. And the monks were sitting in there supposedly chanting. It was a pretty dismal effort. Shantau has this nice park between the water and the city wall. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't cooperating, so we just walked through and then on down in through the wall into the old town. Apparently some of these houses can be dated back to the 1600s. The temple was built over several periods, but the initial construction was about 738 AD. The weather was better in the afternoon, so we visited the bridge. The Wanji Bridge is thought to have been the first one in China, and possibly the world, that was built so it would open and allow ship traffic. It was built in the late 1100s and early 1200s, but more piers have been added, both north and south, since that time. Cables were manipulated to move the floating section out of the way for ships to come through. It looks like it was a laborious practice. The buffalo statue was supposed to protect the bridge. A similar one on the other side was washed into the water some years back. Maybe it needed the protection. The stone-hewed support beam is typical of those used in the spans. No business for the tour boats, so they just parked it. This so-called mansion is used to exemplify the effect of the overseas Chinese. This man became very rich while overseas, came back around 1900 and built this structure to house the village he came from. It appears that some parts are still occupied. Note the security features. They house some historical material, and apparently they give some plays occasionally with these geese. He also built this separate but adjacent structure for his father's descendants. Unfortunately, most, if not all, were booted out at the time of the communist takeover. Many people still live in the area, including this lady who married into the original family. How they came to possess part of the building, I don't know, but I believe it was repurchased after conditions were eased. She insisted on putting on this fancy jacket before being photographed in front of the room containing the family altar. The jacket came back off again immediately afterwards. She has lived in this place for all of her married life and is the only one of her family still doing so. Her son moved to a more modern apartment. She intends to continue here and does as much maintenance as she can afford, but it is going downhill. She apologized for the mess in her bedroom and insisted on giving us something to eat before we left. Now this reminds me of when we sailed out of Canton, heading for the gold fields. I don't understand why they have this sign. They got a fenced off area, even have a toilet, and this man seems to have survived. This must have been a very expensive street in its day, but its day is past. Calvin Klein has gone down market. The trip is over. Some of us stayed an extra day to wind down and to appreciate our fancy hotel. They aren't all clogging the sidewalks. Some are clogging the streets too. Funny, all the books were in Chinese. They used the Starbucks model for pricing too. Next morning, plane to Shanghai, and then one back to Canada.